Daylight saving time, quite a controversial topic, but you're probably wondering, why is it easier to fall back than to spring forward? I'm Dr. Andy Burkowski of ReLACS Health, and I'm going to be talking about the time change. Well, right now, the Senate, at the time of this recording, has passed a bill to make daylight saving time permanent, and I'm obviously an advocate of making standard time permanent, as are most of the sleep experts, including the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. But while we still have this time change, you're probably wondering why it's easier to fall back around the first week of November than it is to spring forward. And that relies on two factors with the body's biological clock and how we sleep. Number one is there's something called a tau, and that's actually the length of our biological clock. Our biological clock is set to around 24 hours, but in most individuals, it's slightly more than 24 hours. So we rely on things like light and other social factors, schedule, food, social interactions. That kind of keeps our clocks aligned to exactly 24 hours, or the rotation of the Earth. But in falling backwards, it's much easier to stay up later and to extend the length of time than it is to shorten the 24-hour period and essentially get less sleep. The second factor is that we are able to wake ourselves up when we should be sleeping, but we are not able to fall asleep when we're not physically able to fall asleep. We can't force ourselves to fall asleep. And this is a principle of sleep. It's a principle of the importance of the biological clock. So if we normally wake up at 7 and we set the clock back to 6 for daylight saving time ending in the fall, that's pretty easy to do. We're just basically waking up potentially an hour later if we have to wake up at 7. But on the opposite side, back in the spring, we actually have to start waking up early before we can fall asleep early. So we can't just go to bed at 10 o'clock, which in the spring becomes 9 o'clock, if we're getting up every day at 6 o'clock, which now becomes 5 o'clock. So I know the numbers are confusing, but this is why it's easier to tolerate daylight savings time. You can just kind of let your body go and sleep in while going to bed at the same time or staying up later. Whereas we get to that point in the spring where you're not going to be able to start falling asleep early until you start waking up earlier. So keep that in mind, and hopefully at some point this video will be obsolete because the switch of the daylight saving time will end. But until that happens, that's what is going on with daylight saving time. As always, this video is for general medical information only. It does not constitute the practice of medicine. Do not make any medical decisions without the guidance of a licensed medical provider. And again, one of the keys to sleeping well is to relax.